Animal behavior. Animal behavior is a science had been developed as a branch of zoology to meet the human curiosity of animal behavior. Greek philosopher Aristotle first stated information about animal behavior in his famous book Historia Animalium. The nature of behavior. Behavior. Let us define. Actually, behavior defines as any action of organism to its environment. Different scientists, Tinbergen, Manning, Barnard, defined behavior in a different way. Characteristics of animal behavior. Behavior lets organisms respond rapidly and adaptively to their environment, usually in a beneficial way. Behavioral responses to stimuli may be adaptive. Internal and external stimuli usually interact to trigger specific behavior. Some behavior occurs in cycle. It may occur daily, monthly, seasonally, or annually. Circadian rhythm is the daily cycle of activity. Both genes and environment affect an animal's behavior. Many behaviors have both innate and learned components. Innate behaviors are triggered by specific internal and external stimuli. Learning is adaptive. Animals that can learn can better adapt to new situations. Every behavior has costs, benefits. Social or courtship behavior evolve when the benefits of group living outweigh its costs. Social behaviors are interactions between members of the same or different species. Some animals, other than humans, exhibit behavior requiring complex cognitive abilities. Cognitive ability may provide an adaptive advantage for living in social groups. Behavioral change in response to stimuli. Many theorists believe that all behavior is under some form of stimulus control. Proper stimulus control is said to have 4 characteristics. The behavior occurs immediately when the conditioned stimulus is given. The behavior never occurs in the absence of the stimulus. The behavior never occurs in response to some other stimulus. No other behavior occurs in response to this stimulus. Most animals respond to many stimuli. They alter their behavior in response to 4 main types of stimuli. These are chemical stimuli. Animals use chemical stimuli for different activities such as mating, marking territories, setting trails, and identifying young. Sound stimuli. Animals often use sound to communicate with each other, such as a war from predators, identifying natives, foraging, etc. Visual stimuli. Snakes, which hunt at night, detect warm-blooded prey in this way. Touch stimuli. Many social animals use touch as a method of communication. Young bees use their antennae to stimulate the worker bees to produce food. Relation between behavior and heredity. Sir Francis Galton was the first scientist to study heredity and animal behavior systematically. Biological basis of behavior. Animal behavior often use species-specific. This is distinct in mating behavior of animals. Sexual behavior often different in closely related animals. Animal behavior inherited to generation. Behavior change in response to alterations in biological structures of process. In humans, Some behaviors run in families. For example, there is a clear familiar aggregation of mental illness. Behavior has an evolutionary history that persists across related species. Chimpanzees are 4 closest relatives, separated from us by a mere 2% difference in DNA sequence. How do genes influence behavior? Genes influence behavior indirectly. There is usually more than one gene involved in a behavior. Genes influence the production of proteins that affect the anatomy and physiology of the body. Some behaviors are more genetically influenced than others. There is an interaction between environmental, biological, cognitive, and genetic factors in the development of behavior. A study published in 1999 claimed that overexpression of a particular gene in mice led to enhanced learning capacity. The popular press referred to the gene as the learning gene or the smart gene. The genetically programmed behavior of animal species which released in an automatic and mechanical fashion without any learning or viewing from other members of the same species are known as fixed action patterns or FAP. These behaviors have several salient characteristics. They are specific to the species. They occur in a highly similar fashion from one occurrence to the next, and they do not appear to be appreciably altered by experience. Mating dances are another FAP example. Many varieties of birds engage in this type of courtship behavior. Fixed action pattern. Gray-legged goose rolls the egg back to the nest using side-to-side head motions. Sign stimulus. The appearance of an object near the nest. If the goose loses the egg during the retrieval process, it stops the head motion but continues the pulling motion of retrieval. The begging behavior of newly hatched chicks. Raised heads, open mouths, and loud cheeps. Sign stimulus. Parent landing at the nest. Dogs and wolves show fixed action pattern behavior at different circumstances by changing their tail and face attitudes. The innate behavior. Innate behavior is behavior that occurs naturally in all members of a species. Innate behavior is also called instinctive behavior. Characteristics of innate behavior. Innate behaviors are not learned. You are born with them. The ability to swim, for example, is an innate behavior of whales and fish. Suckling to get milk is an innate behavior of mammals. Blinking, breathing, and shivering when cold are all innate behaviors. Some of the familiar innate behavior of animals are fighting behavior, found in birds and mammals during breeding season to determine breeding terrain. Courtship and mating behavior, found in birds and insects during breeding season. Parental care behavior, found in fishes, amphibians, birds, and mammals. Migratory behavior, most common in insects, fishes, and birds. Hoarding behavior, most common in insects and rats. Examples of innate behavior: taxes, reflexes, instincts. Let's talk about taxes. A taxis is an innate behavioral response by an animal to a directional stimulus or gradient of a stimulus intensity. It is a spontaneous adaptation of animal. Types of taxis. Phototaxis. Phototaxis is a kind of taxis or locomotory movement that occurs when a whole organism moves toward or away from a stimulus of light. Thermotaxis. Thermotaxis is the positive or negative response of a freely moving organism toward or away from a source of heat. Euglena, amoeba, paramecium always shows negative thermotaxis. Chemotaxis. Chemotaxis is the phenomenon whereby organisms direct their movements according to certain chemicals in their movement. Thigmotaxis. Thigmotaxis is a taxis in which contact, spatially with solid body, it may be positive or negative. Hydrotaxis. Hydrotaxis is the directional movement of an organism or cell in response to the stimulus of water. Anemotaxis. Anemotaxis is an orientation movement of a free-living organisms in response to wind. Rheotaxis. Rheotaxis is a form of taxis seen in many aquatic organisms, whereby they will turn to face into an oncoming current. Geotaxis. Geotaxis is a taxis in which the force of gravity is the directive factor. Galvanotaxis. Galvanotaxis or electrotaxis is the movement of an organism in a particular direction in response to an electric current. Phonotaxis. Phonotaxis is the movement of animals in response to sound vibration. Conditional taxis. When animal shows two or more taxis at a time, then it is called conditional taxis. After taxis, now let's talk about reflex and instinct. Reflex, automatic response to a stimulus, pulling your hand away from heat, jumping at a loud noise are the reflex behavior. Instinct, something you are born knowing to do, building a nest, suckling. Pathway of reflex action. Receptor, sensory neuron, integration center, motor neuron, effector. Reflexes are of two types: simple or unconditioned or natural reflexes, complex or conditioned reflexes. Unconditioned reflexes, inborn or inherent reflexes. Conditioned reflexes is acquired reflexes. Secretion of saliva when food is kept in mouth is unconditioned reflex, and secretion even with thought is conditioned. Some common reflexes of human: accommodation reflex, acoustic reflex, ankle jerk reflex, blushing, corneal reflex, cuff reflex, knee jerk, Moro reflex, sneeze, yawn. Justification of innate behavior. Winter migration of birds, spider webs, parental care. Parental care in fishes, parental care in frog, parental care in birds. Learning behavior. Learning is modification of behavior through practices, training, or experiences. Learning is an adaptive behavior allows individuals to adapt to specific environment challenges. In general, learned behavior will always be non-heritable, extrinsic, permutable, adaptable, progressive. Learning may be associated and non-associated. Associated learning is gaining experience of behavioral response from connection of a stimulus to that response. Example, classical conditioning. Non-associated learning is gaining experience for a behavioral response without connection to a stimulus and response. Example, habituation. W.H. Thorpe classified learning of animal in following 6 categories: habituation learning, imprinting, conditioning learning, trial and error learning, latent learning, insight learning. Differences between innate and learning behavior. Innate behavior, genetically based. Learned behavior, based on experience. Innate behavior, inherited from parents, non-inherited from parents. More common in animals, more common in highly intelligent species. Innate behavior, increased chance of survival and reproduction. Learned behavior may or may not increase chance of survival and reproduction. Innate behavior developed by natural selection. Learned behavior develops by response to an environmental stimulus. Theory of Pavlov's reflex of saliva of dogs. Ivan Pavlov was a Russian physiologist. He developed an experiment testing the concept of the conditioned reflex. During his studies on the digestive systems of dogs, Pavlov noted that the animals salivated naturally upon the presentation of food. In the famous experiments that Ivan Pavlov conducted with his dogs, Pavlov found that objects or events could trigger a conditioned response. Here is the picture. Before conditioning, food, then salivation. Bell, no response. During conditioning, bell plus food, salivation. Then after conditioning, only bell, salivation. Pavlov's theory later developed into classical conditioning, which refers to learning that associates an unconditioned stimulus that already results in a response with a new conditioned stimulus. As a result, the new stimulus brings about the same response. The three stages of classical conditioning include before conditioning, during conditioning, and after conditioning. Stage 1. Before conditioning. In this stage, the unconditioned stimulus produces an unconditioned response in an organism. For example, a stomach virus would produce a response of nausea. In another example, a perfume could create a response of happiness or desire. Stage 2. During condition. During this stage, a stimulus which produces no response is associated with the unconditioned stimulus, at which point it now becomes known as the conditioned stimulus. For example, a stomach virus might be associated with eating a certain food such as chocolate. Also, perfume might be associated with a specific person. Stage 3. After conditioning. Now, the conditioned stimulus has been associated with the unconditioned stimulus to create a new conditioned response. For example, a person who has been associated with nice perfume is now found attractive. Also, chocolate which was eaten before a person was sick with a virus now produces a response of nausea. Social behavior. Social behavior is behavior directed towards society or taking place between members of the same species. Characteristics of social animals. Social behavior is defined by interaction, not by how organisms are distributed in space. Social behavior ranges from division of labor, cooperation, altruism, and reproduction. Many social behavior of animals are adaptive. All social animals have had to modify or restrain their behaviors for group living to be worthwhile. What is altruism? Rooted in the Latin word alter, meaning other. Altruism means living for others. Key component: selflessness and unselfish regard for the welfare of others. French philosopher Auguste Comte coined the term altruism. Examples of animal altruism. Vampire bat. Vampire bats, species of the subfamily Desmonodontini, are leaf-nosed bats found in America. Their food source is blood, a dietary trait called hematophagy. Three extant bat species feed solely on blood: the common vampire bat, the hairy-legged vampire bat, and the wide-winged vampire bat. Hematophagy. Hematophagy is the practice by certain animals of feeding on blood. Since blood is a fluid tissue rich in nutritious proteins and lipids that can be taken without great effort, Hematophagy is a preferred form of feeding for many small animals such as worms and arthropods. Altruism in social behavior of honeybee. Honeybees are hymenopteran insects of the phylum Arthropoda, belong to the genus Apis. They have worldwide distribution. In Bangladesh, there are 3 species of honeybee, viz. Apis indica, Apis dorsata, and Apis flora. The Europe and African species of honeybees are respectively of Apis mellifera and Apis adamsoni. Castes of honeybee. There are 3 castes in the colony: a queen of fertile female, several hundreds of drone or male, and several thousands of workers or sterile female. Caste of honeybee: queen, worker, drone. Queen, fertile adult female, typically mates with 10 or more drones, ensures genetic heterogeneity in the hive, controls worker by pheromones which inhibit ovarian development of workers. Drone, fertile adult male, mates with queen from during her mating flight. Worker, unmated adult females, daughters of the queen, perform tasks necessary for colony to function. Queen, there is only one queen per hive. They have no salivary glands and do not produce wax and honey. A queen bee can live for 3 to 5 years. When she dies or becomes unproductive, the other bees will make a new queen by selecting a young larva and feeding it a diet of royal jelly. For queen bees, it takes 16 days from egg to emergence. This is called supersedure. Supersedure is a term used by beekeepers to describe the replacement of an old queen by her daughter. Royal jelly. Royal jelly is a protein vitamin steroid rich nutritious food produced by worker honeybees from their hypopharyngeal and mandibular glands and fed to all larvae in the colony, regardless of sex or caste. It typically contains about 60.05% of water, 12.34% of proteins, 12.43% of sugar, 5.465 fats, 0.92% inorganic salt, and 2.80% other substances. Nowadays, royal jelly is used for cosmetics of skin care and fighting the effects of aging. Drones. Drones are produced from the unfertilized eggs through the process of parthenogenesis, so they are haploid in nature. A drone's primary role is to mate with a fertile queen. Bee mating occurs outside of the hive in mid-flight, 200 to 300 feet in the air. This location is known as the drone mating area, and it can be a mile or more away from the hive. Workers. A hive has 60,000 to 80,000 workers bees. They are produced from fertilized eggs, although they are unable to reproduce. The larvae supplied with bee breath developed into worker bees. Bee breath is a mixture of bee pollen, royal jelly, honey, and beeswax, all bound together with workers' bee saliva. They come out from the hive at the age of 7 days. After 21 days, they become a forager for collecting pollen and nectar. The foraging bees perform 2 types of dances, round dance and wiggle dance, which inform about the sources of food to other workers. These dances are called bee language. Here is the picture: round dance and wiggle dance. Austrian ethologist Karl von Frisch awarded the Nobel Prize in Physiology or Medicine in 1973 for explanation of bee language. Austrian ethologist Karl von Frisch awarded the Nobel Prize in Physiology or Medicine in 1973 for explanation of bee language. Swarming in honeybees. A new honeybee colony is formed when the queen bee leaves the colony with a large group of worker bees. This process is called swarming.